All right, guys. So we have talked transfer portal winners. So today we're going to be talking the top 10 transfer portal losers. All right. So a lot of these are kind of due to coaching changes. A lot of it are due to really just the sport now as it is. You have a group of 5 school that is successful. You have good players. They're going to get poached by Power 5 schools. It's just going to happen. Transfer portal giveth, transfer portal taketh. And we're going to dive into that in a second. But this is just a so far ranking because obviously – things are going to change once we get to spring ball season. Guys are going to leave if they lose out in the starting spot. Depending on who Michigan hires, that could cause a max exodus from Michigan. You could see guys getting poached from there. If, let's say, they hire Brian Kelly, that would give LSU's guys 30 days to transfer, and so on and so on and so on. The dominoes never end. Let's go ahead and start here. Let's look at the top 10 losers. First up here, this is no particular ranking, but we've got Clemson. All right, so Clemson. Personally, I'm a big fan of Dabo Swinney. I think he's a really good coach, but for some reason, he has refused to acknowledge and adapt to the transfer portal. So basically, they have 0 incoming transfers, which you can see, but they've lost some starters. I mean, look at it. We got a couple 4-stars here. For example, Mukuba, safety, going to start at Texas probably this year. Pride, cornerback, going to start at Missouri. And it's not even necessarily the caliber of guys that are losing, but they just refuse to adapt to it. And yet Clemson still is a borderline top 25 team. If he adapted to the transfer portal, he'd probably be the Clemson head coach right now. I'm talking about Dabo. But next up here, we've got UCLA. All right, so again, this is not necessarily who is left, but just the quality of guys that have left. Look right here. This is a guy I want to talk about mainly, Dante Moore. This is supposed to be your quarterback of the future. He leaves to go to Oregon. He even started some games for you this year. Leaves to go to Oregon to be the backup for Oregon this year, behind Dillon Gabriel. And the fact that Chip Kelly can't keep this guy in-house is kind of scary for Chip Kelly. It might be a sign of the times. Don't be surprised if Chip Kelly leaves. I've heard his name thrown out for a couple offense coordinator jobs, actually, in the NFL. There were also some rumors at the end of the year that he might get fired. So who knows, but it doesn't look good for UCLA so far and Chip Kelly. Next up here, Oregon State. All right, so this is our first casualty of just coaching changes. Jonathan Smith went to Michigan State, built Oregon State up pretty successfully, and they lost guys. All right, so for example here, D lineman to Florida State, wide receiver Bolden, Oregon State, but most importantly, they lost their quarterbacks. All right, DJU, former Clemson transfer, headed to Florida State. Also, Aiden Chiles, their prize recruit, is headed to, my bad, my head's in the way, but it's headed to Michigan State with Jonathan Smith. So this is kind of just a sign of the times. If you lose your coach, your team gets a 30-day window to transfer, and that's probably going to happen. Pardon me. All right, next up here we have Washington State. All right, so this one, mainly due to Cam Ward leaving, but this is kind of just they got essentially demoted is kind of what happened to Washington State. You're in the Power 5, you get demoted to essentially the Mountain West, and guys are just going to transfer. It's going to happen. Again, they were Power 5 players, came in to win the Pac-12 championship, make the playoff, and now it just doesn't look good because, they're demoted pretty much to not be part of the Power 4, even though it used to be a Power 5. Next up here, Alabama. Look at this, 30 outgoing transfers. That's freaking insane. So it's came out since that some of these guys reportedly took lesser NIL deals to just play for Nick Saban, which is believable. They want to play for the best, and they were willing to take a pay cut to do it. And unfortunately, that's kind of where the game's headed at the moment is just it's pretty much free agency with no cap in Madden. It's kind of what it is right now. As far as whoever's paying the most, you're going to get the guys. And being a Texas and Ohio State guy, that's okay with me. I still don't like the way it's headed, but my teams are going to get better because they pay a bunch and they make a lot of money. They have good donors, but still, I don't like the way it's headed. It's crappy, and they need to fix this somehow. That's a rant for another video probably, but yeah, it's freaking chaos right now. They've even said a couple of, coaches that came out and said that. It's just, look at Kiffin even. He said this ain't right, and they're loading up in the portal and don't miss. But talking about Alabama, Julian Sayin, head to Ohio State, Grimsley, Florida, Caden Proctor, Iowa, Caleb Downs, Ohio State, Trey Amos, Ole Miss. It never ends. Niblack, Texas, they're losing their tight end. They're losing their receiver, losing their best players on defense. Talking about Isaiah Bond, who I'll talk about earlier. But, yeah, it just never ends here. Now, I will say they do still have Jalen Milroe for now. And they have brought in some okay transfers from Washington in particular. So there is still a chance here for Alabama to be good, but still they are a loser of the transfer portal. You look at all the dudes that they have lost as far as their quality. And I think I read that if you take all the players alone that they have lost, that's the number 6 or top 5 transfer portal class or something. Freaking insanity, man. Next up, Oklahoma. All right, so they have a lot of outgoing transfers, but the one I want to focus on is Dillon Gabriel, quarterback, headed to be Oregon's quarterback next year to replace Bo Nix. But I was really impressed with Dillon Gabriel from what I saw this year. Really, you look at them last season compared to this season, and the difference is Dillon Gabriel. And he's carried Brent Venables to some serious wins this year. The guy beat Texas by himself pretty much. I know a lot of people are Jackson Arnold believers, Jackson Arnold fans. Was it definitely a prize recruit, but I don't think he's as good as Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel is really good. I think he's the real deal. I think he's better than Bo Nix even. So I think Oregon, really big winner there, but Oklahoma a loser for me. All right, next up here we have Duke. All right, another victim, Mike Elko, head to A&M. So they're going to lose guys. In particular, they lose their running back, Jordan Waters, and they lose their quarterback, Riley Leonard. If this team is healthy this year, particularly Riley Leonard, they're probably a top 15 team, but losing their backfield, not a good recipe there for success. All right, next up here, let's get to the small schools a little bit here. We have Toledo. All right, so Toledo, really a good year this year, borderline top 25 team, but they lose their backfield. All right, Peny Boone, running back, you can see it here, 4-star transfer, headed to Louisville to be their replacement for Jordan. They also lose their quarterback, Dequan Finn, really impressive guy, kind of got some looks from Power 5 schools like Wisconsin this year, with some rumors he might head to Ohio State at one point, but he ultimately ends up at Baylor. But quarterback and running back combo that Toledo is really going to miss next season. All right, next one here, kind of an interesting one. Texas State. All right, so I want you to just look at these guys right here. Jayden De Laura, TJ Finley, Malik Hornsby. All right, so 1, 2, and 4 on your list. You can see all 4-star quarterbacks that they lost, besides Finley's 3-star. But basically what happens, Hornsby was a former Arkansas quarterback, transferred out. But TJ Finley was their starter this year, so it was okay. But they bring in Jayden De Laura from Arizona, and then TJ Finley transfers out. Long story short, fast forward to today, now Jayden De Laura is transferred out as well. Texas State doesn't have a quarterback. Really good year last year for GJ Kinne in his first year, but now you don't have a quarterback, and they're scrambling in the transfer portal trying to figure something out. All right, last but not least here, we have Texas A&M. I know they're like number 1 in a lot of the portal rankings, but that's more, the amount of people they have as far as transfers coming in, not necessarily the quality of them. So quantity over quality there. They have lost some serious dudes here because we know a couple years ago, Jimbo Fisher brought in arguably, I guess, statistically the best recruiting class ever. Pretty much that recruiting class is gone now. They're all out the window in the transfer portal. So as you can see, Evan Stewart, 5-star receiver, headed to Oregon. All right, they're losing some serious talent here. Let me scroll down and find the rest of them. Where are we at here? LT Overton, 4-star D lineman, head to Alabama. 4-star tight end, Jake Johnson, head to North Carolina. 4-star safety, head to LSU. 5-star, number 1 player in the transfer portal, Walter Nolen, head to Ole Miss. You can tell by where these guys are going that they are severely sought after in the transfer portal. And you're going to see the transfer portal impact. Like I said, we're not done yet by any means. Come spring ball season, you don't play as good as you thought you were going to in the spring game. You don't get as much playing time as you thought you were going to in the spring game. You're going to see more guys transfer. It's going to happen. And like I said, if any more coaching stuff goes down, you're going to see the dominoes and the ripple effects in the transfer portal. But these are my top 10 losers so far in the transfer portal. Who would you take off of this list? Who would you add to this list? Who has the worst transfer portal class? Who has suffered the most from the transfer portal this season? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video. Most importantly, subscribe.